good news can often get overlooked or buried by the negative in our everyday lives. So let's change that. I'm Adrianna.
And I'm Wyatt.
We're just two ordinary people without any special qualifications or anything, trying to navigate life. We invite you to join us as we share wholesome stories, news articles of hope, and ideas about how we can all make the world just a little bit brighter. We are Uplifting Positive Stories. Welcome back to another episode of Uplifting Positive Stories. We're so glad you've joined us. How are you doing today, Wyatt?
Doing good. We're getting a little bit of rain lately in our area, but it's much needed because we didn't really have any last year. So it's kind of one of those weird things where it's like, you know, you'll have a good sunny day, but when you don't have any rain for a lengthy period of time, it causes other problems. So I'm glad to see that we're off to a better start in that regard this year.
And you know what? Hopefully it'll make the grass a little greener too. So
it already is. It's already looking pretty green out there.
Yeah, it's already getting kind of green. For reference, we live in the Midwest, so we have a long spring period. So it takes a while for our grass to not look like the dead brown disgustingness that we have in the wintertime.
Especially when we had like no snow this year, weirdly. And so it's already looking a lot greener than it ought to be given our lack of water this season. So I'm counting our blessings for that.
Yes. Awesome. Well, for today's episode, we have a couple of Reddit stories that have the same central message or theme to them. We're just going to roll right into that. Today's first Reddit story comes from the thread Casual Conversation, which is another new one for the podcast. I don't think we've featured anything from that thread yet.
No, I haven't heard of that one before.
I would say this is less of a story and more just an observation that someone had that I thought was simple, but yet also an important thing, I think, to remember for all of us. This one, the title of the story is, I've been expressing myself more through my appearance and I am in awe of the world's response. The story says, I want to hear about any stories of strangers making your day because when it happens, it catches me off guard, but I will likely never forget it. I started wearing these dangly earrings, shirts of my favorite artists, and flashier than I'm used to jewelry, and I've had some people at the grocery store or on a coffee run acknowledge them, and it encourages me to do the same. Just makes my day in a world that can be pretty bleak sometimes. So from there, we had some comments from some people on the thread to her original story. Someone said, I'm a standard boring white male in appearance, average height, brown hair, and the standard short parted on the left style. I decided to wear something fun, so I got a Captain America hoodie. It looks like Captain America's costume. When I started wearing it, someone would compliment it every time I wore it for months. I think now it is a bit old and faded, so I don't get compliments on it as much. But the best was when I wore it in Disneyland. I went on the Star Tours, and a stormtrooper took a look at my hoodie, then pulled up and gave me a salute. It was awesome. The next comment, someone said, shirts of my favorite artists. I dress like musicians I like sometimes, currently in a System of a Down phase, and sometimes I get compliments too. Ironically, feeling good in SOAD-inspired outfits and pushing myself out of my own personal style has been more rewarding than scary/bad.
Gotcha. I mean, it's cool when like people like can identify with you to a certain extent, you know, like say like for me, years ago, I used to like wear like more like nerdy shirts, like Star Wars or whatever, and like, you know, people who are sharing the fandom would comment maybe, you know, one of my favorite old shirts was like Stormtroopers on break or something, and it was like Stormtroopers like playing ping pong or something, something like that, you know. That's kind of a fun little shirt like that, you know. And so when you have people who have shared that kind of fandom and like connect with you, you know, like it's kind of fun for them to see that, you know, and like connect with each other. I will say, I hope that like, I'm glad that like the people in the stories in the comments are like getting like compliments, but I hope they're not doing it for the compliments. Cause I feel like if you're doing it like for the sake of compliments, then I worry that, you know, you might be disappointed if like you don't get the compliments, you know?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, I'm not saying that is in fact the case. I just would hope that's not the case.
Right. I feel like the best mindset to go into wearing something like that shows something about yourself that you enjoy or that you're interested in is to do it simply just to express that fact that you like that. What I think is cool about reading this story is that I think it sounds to me like some of the people in the comments were kind of nervous about wearing it because maybe you don't see a lot of people wearing like a Captain America hoodie or shirts that have like certain artists on it. But I think it's cool to do that because then it almost like breaks the ice with strangers to a degree too, because then it gives you something in common that you might not have known unless you started a conversation. And sometimes it's just hard to start a conversation with somebody when you don't know if you have anything in common with them at all. But to wear a shirt that has Captain America or Star Wars, like you were saying, or a famous artist, a musician, or whatever, to have something on your shirt that says, hey, I'm a fan of this to a degree, gives you something to just have a common ground with them. And from there, the conversation can kind of go wherever. But then at least you have something to say, hey, you like this, so do I. And that starts the conversation. So I think that's a really cool jumping off point for speaking to someone that you don't know, to wear a shirt that shows your interest. I thought that was cool.
Well, even if you're not a fan of it, like it still can be a conversation starter because you can try to learn more about that
Right.
thing, like, for example, in the case of they're talking about wearing like shirts that are for their favorite bands or whatever, I'm musically inept. I don't know many bands with a couple exceptions. So for more than likely for me, I'd be like, well, what's that band? Tell me more about them, like you can be a conversation starter in that way, if you're open to like sharing like your passion with someone new who's not familiar with it.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, I feel like it just shows that you're not afraid to show your individuality too. You're not worried about feeling like you have to fit in. By wearing something that shows your interests or shows your style, it doesn't even have to be like an image of a famous artist, but if maybe it's a style of a shirt, or a style of clothing in general that you just think expresses yourself more than maybe just a normal t-shirt or a normal sweatshirt or whatever. By doing that, it shows that you're okay with expressing your individuality, and sometimes that can inspire other people to do the same too. So I feel like it's cool to see this thread of people sharing that, hey, I decided to step out of my comfort zone and wear something that I felt like expressed myself. Like the OP originally said that they started wearing dangly earrings and flashier jewelry than they were used to. But by doing that, sometimes it can inspire other people to try to express themselves when wearing something different than they normally would, or maybe a different hairstyle or a different hair color or whatever than they're used to, because they think that that would be cool to have that or whatever. So sometimes I feel like stepping out of your comfort zone can help other people to step out of their comfort zone to express themselves and how they present themselves. So, yeah.
And I think people are more, especially strangers, are more supportive than I think we fear that they aren't. Like, I mean, outside of maybe high school, I don't feel like most strangers would walk up to you and be like, nice shirt, loser. I mean, like, that's more of like a high school stereotype, and even then it's a stereotype, so I don't even know how accurate that is for most people. I like to think that most people, if they don't like something, are just going to not comment, especially if they don't know you, if they don't know you, well, then don't listen to them.
Right. And even if someone did like make a weird comment about your shirt, it's one person, I feel like it's easier to write that off as, okay, that person was rude. I wish that I could have taken this more to heart growing up too. I remember when I was in middle school, this was I think for most girls in my middle school, was you had to wear certain brands of clothing to like fit in. So I remember like Aeropostale and Hollister, like those were the two that you had to, if you were going to fit in, you had to be wearing those brands on your clothing. And I look back and I think, honestly, the people that stood out to me the most in middle school were the people that didn't do that. That were wearing things that actually reflected who they were a little bit more, and their style and their interests. If you're fitting in, it's kind of boring, And I look back and I think back to the shirts that I was wearing, and I'm like, honestly, that didn't really tell anyone anything about myself. I was just worried about fitting in by wearing a shirt that said Aeropostale on it. But I think by being willing to put yourself out there and maybe wear something different, sometimes that can, I don't know, say a lot about your confidence level too. And I think that's a really brave thing to do, to wear something or present yourself in a way that is authentic to yourself as well.
Is there any time you can think of where you kind of like tried something a little different, like wear a different kind of like jewelry or a different kind of clothing that kind of like was outside what you'd be your typical norm?
I guess a little thing that I had done that wasn't even that drastic, and I don't know why I was so nervous about it, because really it's not a big thing at all. I was getting into learning how to do my makeup better than I had, and I usually was very minimalistic with my makeup and didn't really put much on at all. But I tried to start doing kind of a winged eyeliner look, and I was terrified that it looked bad. Again, it wasn't even super noticeable, but it was there. And I was nervous, and I went to get my hair cut, and I just remember my hairdresser was like, wow, I love your winged eyeliner look. That's so cool. And I just sat there and I was like in shock. I was like, really? You liked it? Oh, well, that's cool. And it kind of inspired me to, okay, well, maybe I'll try it more, and I'll do this more often. And I don't need to be so nervous about it. So like you said, Wyatt, I feel like majority of the time, if people don't like your style, they're just not going to say anything. And who cares if they don't? It's about yourself and expressing yourself. Not everyone has the same tastes, just look at celebrities, what they wear on the red carpet. What people wear is such a broad scale because it reflects different people's styles because everyone has such different tastes. Yeah, I think that majority of the time, if someone makes a comment, it's going to be a positive thing, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also scared about fitting in.
Right. Or not being noticed. Slipping under the radar a little bit.
Blending in with the crowd. Exactly. So they're going on to the next Reddit story. It's kind of the same kind of vibe, but this one focuses on tattoos. This story comes from the Reddit thread. Again, what's the most wholesome experience you've had with a stranger? We've covered this one in past episodes, so we're going back to it. This one says, backstory. I have a lot of tattoos going down my left leg. I think they are gorgeous and I love them all. I live in a very conservative area. Usually, when I'm approached by an older person or a couple 70 years plus about them, they are wanting to judge me, ridicule, or preach to me. I often hear, why did you do that to your body? God did not want you to do that, and the list goes on. My go-to response became, you purchase art to hang on your walls or decorate your house and yard. I purchase art and have it put on me so I can enjoy it all the time. Actual event. This one time, I was approached by an older couple, and before they could get to me, I could tell they were discussing my tattoos. I thought, here we go again. The lady spoke first, and I was taken aback by her comment. She stated she has never cared for tattoos and did not have any herself. She went on to say that she thought my leg was one of the prettiest pieces of art she had ever seen in her life. I was blown away. Her husband expressed a similar opinion. They both had questions about it. Where did the idea come from? Who did it? How long did it take? Was it painful? I answered all of their questions and thanked them for not judging me. I actually cried when she gave me a hug and told me not to worry about people's judgments. That moment has stuck with me for over 10 years. It was the most wholesome event in my life because they were so open and honest with their curiosity and appreciation of my tattoos as the art that they are.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, first I want to that makes me kind of want to reel back a statement I made earlier about, okay, maybe sometimes people will say something, there will be judgmental people out there. I'm just going to revise it and say that I don't think it's the judgmental comments aren't going to happen as much as you fear maybe.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that it won't happen in this case with the tattoos. Yeah, some people have negative opinions surrounding around tattoos. I mean, full disclosure for us, we don't have tattoos ourselves, and I don't really have, for myself, much desire to get a tattoo. But, knowing friends and stuff and people who have tattoos, and there's a lot of thought put behind them often, and I do think they're really cool, and no judgments there. I can't relate to having that on my skin personally, but it's cool to look at, and I know there's a lot of oftentimes artistry involved, so to have her leg kind of designed to be like a walking art piece, and it sounds like that couple kind of recognized that, and is able to put aside their own feelings about it for themselves and just appreciate how they utilize it for themselves,
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting that she had endured a lot of those comments because of her tattoos. And to me, I just wonder why. What? It's not your body, so why do people care what you are expressing yourself with? It'd be one thing if it was maybe vulgar things or something like that.
Right.
But if it's
or
clearly
offensive,
not, yeah, it's clearly not. So why do they care, right? And that's why, again, I loved, like you were saying, I loved that this couple expressed hey, tattoos aren't for me, but I can admire the fact that yours looks really cool. And that's a really beautiful art piece. And I love that they also asked a lot of questions and showed interest. And I think that's a thing that a lot of people with tattoos would definitely welcome, because it's a lot of times there's a story behind the actual piece that they have on their body. There's usually some sort of meaning behind it. Maybe sometimes it's just because they have a genuine interest in something and that's a tattoo of it. So for example, in a previous episode, we talked about how this guy had a bunch of Disney characters on his arms. He had sleeves of Disney characters, his favorite ones from Pixar movies. And that was just because him and his family were big Disney fans and they did a lot of Disney trips together. And so it was very meaningful for him because those were his kids' favorite characters. So there's that aspect to it too. And a lot of times it's a cool thing for them to be able to, for somebody that has those tattoos to be able to share the story behind it with people. So yeah, I guess for me, it's way easier said than done. But I would try to silence the haters in your mind, I guess. And even if people do say something that's negative, that's their problem, Like, it has no bearing on them whatsoever. But again, I feel like majority of the time people are usually kind and want to give compliments more than say mean things. So it's sad that this person endured that specifically in this tattoo story.
Mm-hmm.
Being part of the crowd is boring. Being able to stand out and show what you are interested in, again, will connect you to people that matter, right? Like, this person made a genuine connection with this couple there in that moment that she will remember. I mean, she said that moment has stuck with me for over 10 years. So clearly that made an impact. And that wholesome experience weighs heavier than the bad experiences in the grand scheme of things. So I would say, yeah, express yourself if you want to in a way that, of course, is, respectful of other people's things. Like, don't wear something just to rile people up, obviously. I don't think that's necessarily a great route to go. But if it's something that's an interest of yours that you think is worth sharing, go for it. Because, again, you're probably going to meet people or have better connections with people or interactions based on what you're wearing than negative, I would assume.
Mm-hmm. Whatever makes you comfortable in your own skin, whatever makes you feel confident be putting yourself out there that's not at the expense of others,
Exactly. Today's article is continuing on with the theme of clothing or expressing yourself. And this story is titled, "A Boy Was in Tears Because He Didn't Have PJs for Pajama Day. His Bus Driver Came to the Rescue." And it's from today.com. The story is about a bus driver named Larry Farish Jr., who went above and beyond. He's a bus driver for schools in Louisville, Kentucky. And he noticed that when a little boy came on the bus named Levi, that he looked like he was having a really bad day. Apparently this boy is usually super, super smiley. But apparently this day he was sitting on the ground with a jacket over his head. And when the bus driver asked him what's wrong, the boy told him that he didn't have pajamas for pajama day, which was at their elementary school that day. So the bus driver felt really bad that he didn't have his pajamas. So he went and dropped the kids off and then went to a dollar store and purchased 2 pairs of pajamas for the boy, went back to his classroom and gave them to him as as 2 options to wear for that day. And apparently the boy said, and I quote from the article, "I can tell Mr. Larry is nice and his heart is filled with joy. When he got me the pajamas, I did a happy cry." Apparently, the bus driver feels like he's found his calling working with kids and doing bus driving because it has filled him with a lot of passion, and he really enjoys making the kids' day and getting to know them. So, yeah. I thought that was a super wholesome story to kind of wrap up our episode here. Because, yeah, I remember all those days. Do you remember those days in school? All the different, wear school spirit day or dress I don't know. They always had themes and stuff around big sporting events at school or whatever.
I mean, a little bit. I mean, up until high school, I was in a charter school that had uniforms, and so occasional you get wear whatever you want kind of a day, and those were always exciting. And I remember those been the phase of not understanding how color coordination works, because my parents would be like, "No, you can't wear that, because that doesn't work at all." That doesn't work at all. Why not? That's comfortable, but that's not. I don't remember there were specific pajama days, but I know that the not wearing uniform days are always exciting.
Yeah, exactly. An opportunity to show your own style, for sure.
Or my lack of style at the time.
To end it on a positive note, again, just tying it all together, don't let the thoughts of what people are going to think prevent you from trying to be authentically yourself, and whatever that means. Because, again, through presenting yourself in a way that feels right to you and that you feel happiest with, you're going to find your people. And maybe that route might be a little longer. Maybe you might take a while to find people that have those same interests or whatever. You never know. But in the end, that being true to yourself will help you find your people far better than just trying to blend in with the crowd and not be noticed. So, and I know that's way easier said than done. I've struggled with that. And this goes for everything in every episode we've ever talked about. All of these things that we talk about here are our own opinions. We are not experts in any of this. These are all things that we struggle with, that we are just discussing as ideas of how we can maybe make our own lives a little bit brighter. So take from this what you will. And just try to make every day as best as you can.
Mm-hmm.
For that, we will end our episode for today. If you feel like you have any positive, uplifting stories of things that you've witnessed or things that have happened to you, feel free to send them to us at upliftingpositivestories@gmail.com, or you can join our Facebook group at Uplifting Positive Stories. And from there, you can post anonymously if you'd like on there, and we might end up using them on a future podcast episode. We'd love to be able to share some other stories from our listeners and kind of create a community of people that have positive things to share to the world. As always, the Reddit stories and the article from today will be shared down below in the description of this episode, so you can check it out if you'd like to read more details about the PJ story or about the Reddit threads. So thank you so much for tuning in to another episode, and we hope that you'll join us next week. Have a great day.
Stay positive.